Reading, as I said I would, the 1619 Project. I, it must be confessed, don't read much, but I am reading this. She, Nicole Hannah-Jones, as far as I've got is her work, is celebrating. And I find I am too, celebrating a sort of fog lifting. For her, a serious undertaking, a lot of work, a lot of commitment, and now she has the truths and is wielding them like James Baldwin and Toni Morrison, I think, but less sledgehammer. For me, I am a celebrator. In these dark times, she brings relief. This celebration, however, infuriates some of us. It is anathema to some of us. And it is totally understandable, as far as I can tell at my safe distance. Once the rather vacant materialism of Western European civilization is stripped away, one runs into a dark, mean, mercenary individualism that relies on a pride that puts the self in self-esteem and feeds on a most absurd faith that needs no evidence and/or, however, will brook no denial. No other story. And I wonder who objects. And they do. Why they object? What other story, what alternative facts must they hold dear? What bunker hill are they bunkering on that objects? I think that the objecting community has held a truth to be self-evident, a certain supremacy, a humanness that is above the rest, a sort of amazing fiction that if one has been steeped in enough of this magical thinking, I think I haven't, but if you have, it will, like some religions, crowd the truth from your mind. The myth that replaces this chunk of truth will demand the most of your energy to cling to it. It is so far-fetched, so oxygen-deprived, so far from reality and expensive to maintain that it is beyond the reach of the rest of us. And oddly, its most blatant apostles are rich. Of this another time. Now, this rather florid passage is my baseline, is my gospel. I promote no other culture, need air from nowhere else. It is perspective, looking back on what I intimately know and walk away from continually. Heed this, it is so needy it needs to win. So it did. Its unequal battles, it entered battles out-arming the rest every time. Its major inventions were arms. If you go out your door or leave port to find fault, to see a nature that is wrong, if you do this without humility, that is all you will see. And this seeing is the soul of my culture. I have a 35-year-old explanation of this bleakness. I visited New Mexico on a drive from Austin, Texas to Colorado with a girlfriend. The whole thing was thrill, her, the sky above, the price of gas, the foreignness. Staying with a friend of hers in Santa Fe, we were sent out to the city dump to see the view. That's where you went. It was pretty stunning. Buttes, I think they are called, with thunderstorms upon them, lightning striking on 3 mountains while we sat in the evening sun in safety. A landscape of pure spirit, if I knew such things, and I did, and I do. A man appeared, walked past us to a promontory and stared at the view a minute. Then without turning, without looking at us, he asked how we were. Soft Western accent with that lilt I had come to hear as native to that country. Native, comfortably dressed in khaki, slender and very dark. Sarah murmured about the vista, and he started to tell us the mountain names, their significance to the people who had lived there for thousands of years, his people. A funny story about the local gods. He was a professor at the university in town. He welcomed us, wished us well, and then left. 1,000 things might be said about this man, but I'll say he was very unusual. His relationship to us, the way he spoke, to the place, to the law he knew, was unusual. Then I thought, this is not a place you arrive at and change. It changes you. Its power outranks you and whatever you brought with you. And I remembered of my European life, it was the same feeling as the Highlands and the Lake District, the coast of Attica, the coves of Ithaca. Holy places for me. Welcoming, but with rules of silence and respect. Alien, it seemed, but not really, demanding landscapes that should not be paved, uncrushable. The view from the dump at Santa Fe triggered a memory of something that had never happened to me. I felt a call and a demand and heard a chuckle in the wind. If you stay here, you will change. I didn't stay. I took it with me. That is my only insight, really. If your tradition is barging in to put rose gardens and fish and chip shops in deserts far from the ocean, you will make a mess. To lord over and cut the cords that bind you to the many lands and seas, to import your God and banish those resident, you will be unmoored forever, unbalanced. My insight today is that the barrage of alarm every day today, the conspiracies, the underminings, the fascisms and the outrages are natural and inevitable to us. We created the imbalance. We are the exception. We are filled with an unmoored mythology that cannot change. This will continue. Donald Trump is inevitable to us. I don't think the Santa Fe imperative was that I become Apache. I think it said, you be you, Celt. Build your own relationship to these mountains. You are a nomad here for a while until the place accepts you. If it does, the gods will trust you if you treat them well. That's all. They are not nearly as demanding as your one god. They meet you halfway. They celebrate you too. These two movies keep coming back to me. I saw Zulu recently again, and a year ago, All Quiet on the Western Front. Without too much rehash, in Zulu, we follow a small number of white men, a community that includes most of the European varieties, the cliches, the stereotypes, dressed as archetypes of that tiny citizenry who are attacked by Zulus. I think 4,000 Zulus who are presented as one to 150 odd white men, each individuated with guns. The white men just shoot and bicker and shoot some more, and the Zulus just die. They run, the Zulus, they stab, dance, sing, do not speak, and remain compelling, though the story is obviously told. The whites are human. The Zulu are what British men are not. Anathema. There is the writer of the film, or the writer and director of the film, was blacklisted in the United States in the 1950s, which is interesting. And there's a great moment in the film where the I think he's Swedish, preacher, his daughter is watching this Zulu mass wedding, I think. And she says, oh gosh, how awful that these young women have to marry these men. They're sort of mass arranged marriage, and the preacher says to her wisely, well, in England at this moment, young women are selected to marry young men for wealth. At least the Zulus women are guaranteed to have a brave husband. Just interjected. At the start of All Quiet on the Western Front, young men are running across a broken landscape, good-looking blonde chaps, running with rifles in battle gear, and many of them are shot. They fall, presumably dead. That's how movies work, except two. They are subtly singled out. They don't run by the camera like the dying boys. The camera runs with them, picks them out. There's the stars of the movie. They're the two types of humans. The lives we are supposed to value above the rest, straight out storytelling. We all accept it. Herzog is the only person in Herzog. Bellow explores him and him alone, and maybe his readers feel the world that way. I am the only being. The rest are only here to annoy me. Now, in the Iliad, another story of some note, a story we never tell for all our war stories, there are a bunch of lists. There's a long list of the ships. 1,000 ships, their origins, leaders, and numbers. Scholars complain about this list. Performers cut them. Then in every battle, each combatant is introduced and given a little CV. His parents, particular talents, who he loved, maybe his prowesses, his favorite horse, each one, not like All Quiet or Zulu or Black Hawk Down. And who makes these choices? The human poverty of the little regiment in Zulu makes me wonder today and as a child, where's the rest of humanity? The rest of the human condition represented? As a white boy, I am encouraged only to imagine myself perhaps as Hook, or Michael Caine, or Patrick McGee, or Stanley Baker, or the preacher. That's it. And as a boy who liked to run around, I wanted only to be a Zulu. As a boy, I could choose so many truths. Apparently most boys cannot, and they will fill the starved spaces, therefore, with the most ridiculous, unbalanced stories. Achilles was the fastest and flawed. Jesus was the perfect human being. The different outcomes are immense. Christians can never be, in their own minds, essentially wrong. This is our storytelling tradition, my culture's tradition. The Iliad hints at other priorities, but our insistences are different. We will say ours are the only ones, but they're not. They are only the stories and values and myths and at last behaviors that tolerate no other. In human history, this community with those myths and values believe they have won, mostly because they need to believe they have won. To win or believe they have won, it matters little, is the only thing. The highest value, they have one God, and He is omnipotent. So 50 pages into the book of the 1619 Project, I find no lies nor exaggerations. I find the other side of a story. Now I have two sides. There's probably 5 or 6, but we only allow for one. Now we have 2. It is that truth. The metaphor is if a rapist doesn't acknowledge what he did, the crime will only exist if he's accused. Once accused, he can still claim innocence, while the accuser must bring all the evidence. The excuse I have heard of resistance to this project and CRT in general is that the children will be stripped of their pride. Children and pride. This now is loony territory. Maintain the lie or children will be traumatized. There it is. It's what we are, it's what we do. And I find those accusations totally consistent with a culture that forgives its own sins on the left, while the right says simply, what sins? A culture that must find the 1619 Project false.